Got it.
Hey, that's good. I'll be back in one moment. Just let me do this on my phone. Do 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 do. Yes, may you live in interesting times, so they say. They are certainly interesting. Oh, look, it's on. Oh, it's got my song playing there. Right, Kristin, my love, how are you? How's it going over there in Oslo?
The spring is starting finally. The snow is dying, as I say. I'm very happy about that. Yeah, it's intense. I watch so many people around me, and also people who are contacting me asking for guidance that are like very sudden life changes, whether it has to do with the situation in their lives or their health, or like and also, a lot of physical stuff being really triggered in people that are very like out of the blue. And yeah.
Out of the blue, that's our stuff, isn't it? Really, out the blue. Because I got out of the blue quite a strong message: is tell them what the sun's doing, and tell them how it's going to affect them more and more strongly and more quickly as we go along. And I thought, well, okay, I can do that. And so that's what our little my little talk is today. It's really about solar activity, solar pulses, increase in frequency and vibration, and what it means to us at all sorts of different levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. But being guided by the spiritual. And to me, like we've talked before, is spirituality to me is not religion. Not to me. If it's religion to you and it makes you a nicer person, that's great. Carry on, right? But it's all about energy to me, and it's about energy from different dimensions at different frequencies, so we start off with the core stuff and it becomes more refined. And I think what's happening is this refined energy from the sun now, which has got, it's high energy, but it's packing a punch now, and it's affecting everybody on the planet. You just need to look, just need to look at the television for a second or two just to see the lunacy that's going on across the globe.
Yes.
So I, like you, people are getting on to me to say what's going on, and all I can ever do is, point them back to where their source of true power is, which is in their heart and soul. It's within them already, because they ask me for guidance. Well, what shall I do? I don't know what you should do. You need to go in there and ask what you should do, So that's where I'm up to as well, same as you, really. I saw some of your things this week, and, one of them was about, we have to allow the unconscious to be conscious. You think that might cause problems for people?
And that depends on the resistance. Yeah, when whatever it is, it can be very subtle, like very subtle shifts and changes as this is happening, and it can be like massive epiphanies, or really like hitting a wall or a sudden accident in our lives or whatever happens, and it's like we understand that, oh my goodness, I have to change all these patterns, or now I understand that this is only a pattern that I created as a coping mechanism from a trauma, or for people to like me or to be accepted or to receive love from my parents or to do good in school or whatever it is, and it's not really who I am. And then it's like we can go into full identity crisis. Of course, many of us have that at some point in our awakening journey, or it's shifts we need to do in our lives that has to do with how we behave, what we think, how we react in situations. And of course, that again it's a domino effect. It will affect our relationships. It will affect maybe how we do things. Like there's so many shifts and changes. So if we, in the first place, are afraid of changes, yes, then it's going to be really challenging.
I agree. It's a process. It's a process in my understanding, and I could always be wrong. I always say that. I could be totally and utterly wrong. But if what we say rings true with you, right? If it gives you a grip in the gut, it may be just say to yourself, oh, hang on, why did I have that emotional reaction to that? Make a note and go away and sort of ask yourself, why did I get triggered by what those two scoundrels were saying? You know what I mean? One of my biggest things was, and I was conditioned and programmed from an early age to do this, was to respect authority and to respect other adults, you see. I can see that, I've always been a helpful lad. I was a very helpful little lad. In fact, I was virtually close to being a saint, at 7 years of age, really. And
Mm.
I would run round after others, and if they asked for favors, I would do that. And basically, in that process, I completely lost myself, right? I was
Ex-
almost like a programmed automaton,
Yeah,
right? And if somebody asked me for a favor, even before I knew what it was, I would say, "Oh yes, of course," right?
yeah, because
And
that's the
it,
right answer, right?
yeah, the right answer. And people call this programming, they call it conditioning, and how do we get conditioned? Well, it's either through punishment or reward. So
Mm.
if you do this, I'll give you a sweetie, right?
Yes,
If you don't do this, I'll smack you across the back of the head. It's called Hobson's choice. There's
yeah,
no choice. You have to do it. As a child, you have
yes,
to do it, don't you? And the more that you do it, the more that it becomes automatic. And then, and here's the tricky bit, then it leaves our consciousness and is buried then in our long-term memory. And
yes.
I found out that most of the stuff that I was responding to or emotionally reacting to, I didn't even have a clue why I was doing it
Mm.
because it was so deep in my psyche.
Mm.
And as we've talked about already, I think that this truth vibration, as some people have called it, what it seems to be doing is, and certainly from my own experiences, it's getting behind all the stuff that's being pushed down and repressed, and it's
Mm.
bringing it up to the surface to be looked at in the light of day.
Yes, and also this is, a reason or one of the main reasons why many people are experiencing a lot of physical things happening, like sudden diseases or, illnesses in the body. It is because it is the subconscious that rules the body. So it's not your conscious choice of being a good person that affects your health. It is the subconscious programming and conditioning. Because and so that's why it's so important to become aware of the unconscious, but not about not in the way of going around looking for it,
No.
but in being present, because it will arise. And then actually have the courage to look it in the eyes. You look yourself in the eyes and say what needs to change.
Yeah.
Feel
To
them,
face
change the patterns.
it's the courage to face ourselves, isn't it?
Mm.
Because nobody did it to us without us agreeing to it at some level, right? And that's really hard. And the next thing I'm going to say is some people won't like this, but even in childhood as well,
Mm.
and even in the womb, and
Yeah.
even before conception, right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
almost as if we chose this sort of curriculum
Yeah.
before we came here.
Yes, we did. And actually I did a trance channeling yesterday, and I haven't been able to listen through all of it yet because it was a rather long one, but it had to do with what is occurring, has been occurring the last weeks and will continue to do. They gave me actually a timeline. They rarely give me timelines because it can be very distracting for people, but they talked about until 2027, that there's what we have just entered, is a timeline lasting until then. And they started talking about the Akashic records as well, which is what you're referring to, right? It's
Yeah.
what we actually chose, and that what people are experiencing now is very connected to their Akashic records, when especially with how long a process will be, because some things can switch miraculously now.
Yeah.
Well, it always has been possible, but more people will experience that things are coming up and it's shifting super rapidly. But also things that are a bit more prolonged in our experience of space and time can be because those are topics that are connected to your Akashic records. And then it will be a more prolonged experience because we need to, or we have chosen to experience more nuances in that topic. And so it takes a bit more time in our reality.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I see it as an educational process. I mean, there's two sorts of spiritual awakening by all accounts. There's an instantaneous one, you know, just pop, and then you see the world completely differently within a flash, almost like the event that everybody's looking for. Please let it be a quick flash and let it be all over. Well, it doesn't work like that as far as I'm concerned. I could be wrong, but I think there's also one called an educational variety that you've just said, and my understanding, and I get this, and when I say they tell me clearly, it's almost like information comes in from the depth and I get clear pictures and stuff like that. You know, they say to me that, you know, I've forgotten what did they say to me, you know. My mother used to say, must have been a lie, must have been, yeah. But what they say is, oh no, it's one of an educational variety, because there's so many connections, and it might be connected not only to this present life, as you've just said. Now, the Akashic records, as far as I know, are in the invisible worlds. They're in the worlds that are not conscious to us now. And they're associated not with our short-term memory, our conscious mind, but they can be even from millions upon millions of years ago. You know, and some people call that our ancestral heritage. Some people will talk about reincarnation lives and stuff like that. I don't know, you know. I mean, I understand. I have a feeling or an understanding of what reincarnation is, but also about everything happening at the same time as well. That's a bit more difficult to get my head around. But the dreams I've been having recently is, you know, I get a lot of sort of ancient dreams, but I've been having really sort of high-tech technical stuff coming in, almost as if that's coming in from a different part of me now, you know. And some people have said that the left brain, which is associated with the feminine, no, the left brain is associated with the masculine. That's generally looking backwards to the past. The right brain is the creative one, which is feminine and looks to the future, you know. So really, if in order to balance out the way our hemispheres have been, we're going to get these processes where stuff comes back from the past, and therefore it's resent, and it can bring with it resentment, right, and anger and stuff like that. Because you can't be angry about the future because you don't know what's coming up in the future. See what I mean? So people get angry and resentful about the past, but they get anxious about the future. See, it's very interesting, isn't it, really? You know,
it's all fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
what you
so,
said about the spontaneous awakening and like people waiting for that one big event, I think if the amount of energy and that high frequency that is coming from the sun now had come 100 years ago, our bodies would have burned.
yeah.
I'm pretty convinced that it would be like that, because our physical bodies are changing, and that needs time. That it's not done in a moment like that. And with a spontaneous awakening as well. For example, we do see like people talking about Kundalini syndrome, which is really exactly that. There's a very sudden awakening, and there's a sudden alignment of the masculine and feminine energy, and that energy rising. And in that moment, when it goes all the way through, it's like you see everything. And then after that ecstatic, joyful experience of just being one with everything and seeing and understanding everything, and you start to come back into normal life again, the gap between what you then saw and what you now know and what you're actually living is so big that it can cause psychosis in people.
Absolutely.
And that is also one of the reasons why, for most people, a more gentle way into awakening is better. Even though when we are in the midst of, all the shit of it, it feels like, can I just be done with it? Just whatever. And I'll just get to where I want to be, because we imagine it as a place to be or some state to reach. But just being present and doing it as a process is the best for most people.
I agree. And that's what happened to me in 1987. I had a big whap of it, you know what I mean? It was just came in. And I was 8 weeks in the psychiatric department, because it hit me that much. But during the process, there was a point that just time stood still.
Right.
And I understood everything. I still have the same feeling now, because I've got a measure now of the feeling that I'm working back towards. And I got told that's what it can be like, but we're going to guide you now one step at a time back to doing it, so that you also gain understanding of what this human life is all about. So that's where I'm up to, really.
I initiated that very sudden experience.
It was desperation, really. It was the drink, and anything at all. I would take anything at all to change the way I felt, because I felt so desperate. So anything at all to change my emotional state. But I got to a point where I took a whole load of tablets, and it should have seen me off, really. And it was in that point, really,
Yeah.
And you know, it was almost as if, and I don't fall too deeply into all this, but it was almost as if it wasn't my time to go, and that maybe I'd actually picked this, right, to get to such a desperate state in order to come back and guide people through more gently through this awakening process. You know, and I'm not knocking anybody, because different people have to they have to experience different things, but I do think that there's a gentle way to open Kundalini, which is basically opening the root chakra and allowing the energy from the root and Mother Earth to come up and gently rebalance the chakras as it comes up. You know, it's almost like a spiral thing. So that's what I see now. There's a gentle approach. It takes longer, right? It's there to show you what patience is about, right? And as they say, it's in God's time, not your ego's time, you know, because ego stands for edging God out, right? I like that one,
I
you know.
love it.
Yeah. Edging God out is like, I want. Oh, really, do you? So let's just understand there's a difference between what you need and what you want, right?
Yes.
And it's basically what you want has been causing all these things. So why don't you hand it over to us? That's the soul, right? And we'll show you what you need in order to move towards what you really want, you know.
Yes.
And when your wants and your desires, when your desires and your needs are the same thing, that's peace of mind, that, you know. And all I want every day is, you know, I tap on my heart and I say, thy will, not mine, be done. And that's talking to that deepest part of me. And I try and follow that impulse or that propulse or whatever it's called, really. So, yeah. And so that's what's happening. And something before I forget it, really, is people are becoming part of this awakening process, which is becoming more rapid. It's about radiation at all levels, really. So the radiation's hitting us. We have to surrender and allow it basically to permeate and perfuse the whole of our cells, so that the radiation and the light actually starts to come out of our skin pores as well. And I think that's all we need to do, is work with ourselves, surrender, allow the cells to recalibrate themselves, you know, and kick out the shit that's been blocking the light, and just allowing the light to shine through, you know. And to me, it's a very quantum, it's a very physics, it's to do with physics, really, and refined energy and stuff like that. So
Yeah, definitely. It's breathing, allowing, and then emitting. And I think a lot of people as well are experiencing their immune system changing or being triggered. And I think something that can really help with that is to come into that state of surrender and allowance, because there is actually things coming from the outside, this radiation, onto the body. And if we are in resistance to it, we are telling our body as well that is reacting that, hey, there's something coming from the outside, which is what our immune system is supposed to go against, right?
yeah,
And if we
absolutely.
are telling it that, I don't know if this is a good thing, like I just feeling all of these things, our immune system will be on war and it will be much more challenging for us. So coming, like releasing that resistance, coming into the breath and knowing that there will be a symptom now and then, and there will be changes and there will be things happening, but resting into it and trusting the process, the actual like physical reactions, especially in the immune system, will be a lot less.
I agree. And this is what I talked to my friend Elsa Dillon about, is the spleen, the importance of the spleen, because it's almost a forgotten organ, really. You know, it's a cleaning center. You know, there's things called literal cells in the spleen that are basically hoovers, you know, and what they do is they hoover out any sort of abnormal looking cells like red cells, and they pull them out, you know, and stuff. But there's such a strong, I believe that the heart and the spleen are the connection between the heart and soul. But the spleen's so important in terms of immune system function, you know, and it works with the thymus gland at the heart level, and it works in its own sort of center as well. So there's actually a triangle with a point at the back between the shoulder blades as well, and it's called the splenic triangle. You know, and it's sort of well known in Eastern philosophies, and also things called radionics as well. So yeah, I agree with you. And sometimes you can actually palpate and rub the spleen, but then you can feel shit the day or two afterwards because it's clearing a whole load of stuff out, you know.
Yes.
But lots of autoimmune diseases, things, you know, we start to turn on ourselves now, and there's a lot more allergies to things now. You know, bearing in mind there's a lot more chemicals in the environment and stuff like that, you know. So there will be stuff coming from the outside, but if we get our inside system working better, we've got a better chance. So yeah, I totally agree. Spleen is a good thing, and sometimes people can feel that it pushes up under their ribs and under their diaphragm, right, when it's overactive and things. So there's lots of things going on. I was saying to you before, I've had solar plexus stuff going on, and I was thinking, because had those feelings like before I had the heart attack, and I say to me higher self, I say, am I having another one? Or I thought I was doing well here. And I go, no, it's not your heart. It's not your heart. You need to look at your diet a bit more closely. And they go, I knew that was coming anyway. So
Right. Yes.
I'm on my way to fasting. I can feel that happening, and also reducing the amount of food that I consume. Because it's a deeply, I mean, believe it or not, it's an Irish Celtic condition, right? A program to eat as much as you can. What they call it is get your packing in. But that was for days when people were going out at 6 a.m. and shoveling all day long. I mean, they needed the energy, right? But I don't do that. I sit at the computer most of the day, doing academic work and stuff. And then I'll have a cup of coffee there with some chocolate there, and and I can see it going in, and I think my head says, oh, I'll sort that out. But it's only when there's massive pain and discomfort, and that's, Kristin, it seems to be the only time I change things is when I'm in pain. And I know other people like that.
Yes. And I actually noticed on my own healing journey that I was, coming pretty close to being healed. And then I started seeing and, becoming aware that because I had grown so much through so much pain and difficulty and, my journey with chronic fatigue and Lyme disease and everything, I started seeing that a part of me was resistant, because then I was obviously at a point where I was starting to look into my resistance to becoming fully healed, because those are like the last steps, And then I became aware that I was actually having some resistance to being healed because I have grown so much through that. So then what will I stop developing if I don't have those challenges? And then, starting to look into that, and I can actually also grow through being passionate about something, being in alignment, being in joy. And there's so much programming as well, conditioning, around that, oh, yeah, but, no pain, no gain. Yeah. It's bullshit,
Absolutely.
But we are so conditioned to believe that it has to be like that. And so if we want to grow, it's almost like we look for problems so that we make sure that we grow.
Yeah.
And when I realized that in myself, I was like, oh my goodness, are you for real?
Yeah, no, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And apparently it's all about effortless effort, really.
Yeah.
It's that's a Zen thing where you need to make an effort, but if it's in line with your joy, it seems effortless. I mean, you can put as much not force, but you can get with the flow as much as you like, and then you really enjoy it. You've got enthusiasm, you've got complete and utter loads of energy. So really, the only obstruction to the flow is that's what causes dis-ease.
Yes.
And if you're ill at ease with yourself, this is the way I see it, because the simple way of looking at it is, then you're not fully aligned with your soul's purpose. Right? Simple as that, really.
Yes.
But how do you find out what your soul's purpose is? You have to clear all the shit away. And there's techniques and there's sort of deprograms that you can use to get rid of a lot of the crap, And sometimes that's painful, because you almost have to go back, face yourself, say a sorry to other people, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, give yourself for it and stop criticizing yourself, because then you have another thing to criticize yourself.
Yeah. Because I was brought up in a really, really critical environment, only because that was thought to be the best way to motivate people to do things. It was about, you're crap at this. Oh, you're so stupid. All those things, you're really thick and all that, ooh, you'll never be clever enough to do that. They were the sort of things to try and spur me on. It didn't. I'm going to say this now, Mother, it never worked. Because my dad used to say, he used to say this about, never mind your mother, son, you think for yourself, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But because I was attached to my mother's leg, until I was 38 years of age, it really sort of became a program that wasn't mine, that was directing my choices from the unconscious part of my mind.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And
And
it's
I think
not,
it's
that's
very,
not, I'm sorry, sorry. It's not, I'm not blaming or anything like that, because most people do things like that good intentionally,
of
you know.
course,
Yeah.
yes, of
So,
course. And I think it's very interesting as well because there are like certain programs or, conditioning that are very connected to the society or a culture. And what do you think, like being Irish, that are like the main sort of programs that you grew up in, that you've been working through?
well, it's easy. I mean, the food one's massive. The food one is really massive.
Mm.
The Irish Catholic one as well, that
Yeah,
everything you do is a sin. And
right.
then when you start having natural feelings, in your teenage years and all that, right? That's a sin. I was told in the Christian Brothers School, some of you boys now, this is true, this, right? This is a sex education lesson. Some of you boys will be growing hairs now where you've never had hairs before, right? And there'll be other feelings happening. This is true, honest to God. And things may start to change. And if you touch it, you'll go into hell. That
Really?
was it. Right. Yeah.
My
And,
goodness.
13, 14, 15 years of age, we were all in hell,
How to create shame in people.
Oh,
Wow.
no, no, and it did, And what used to happen is then when I drank, I forgot all that, and all sorts of feelings started to happen,
Right.
and you know what I mean, and then you'd wake up then thinking, oh my God, I'm an evil person, and this is true. This is honestly my life, So part of the drinking thing was to make me feel like free of the guilt of that sort of thing. But when
Mm.
the drink levels went down, I was a bad, evil person. You see what I mean?
Oh, of
We
course.
and that's so common. That's so common. And of course, the girls had the same thing as well. You know what I mean? And keep away from those evil. Oh, it was horrendous, horrendous.
Mm.
And I'm still not over it. And I'm 69 years of age next week. You know what I mean? I'm still not over it, because it's lurking in the background.
Mm.
So basically, natural things like standing up for myself. Oh, you can't talk like that. You've got to be kind to people. You've got to do this. So,
Right.
first of all, I can't stand up for myself, not allowed. I
Mm.
can't have natural feelings where all those bits and pieces are working properly, right? All those things were blocking this natural sort of tendency to express myself.
Mm.
And the other thing about the sex one as well, and the repressed sex one, is in drink, and sometimes it can come out like explosive and it can cause murder as well. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
sometimes people they can take actions that overpower them. This is a deep one, this really. They can
Mm.
take actions that can overpower them and overpower other people. And it's because they've been repressing all this stuff that it
Mm.
comes out, you see. So we have to understand at the deep level is sometimes people don't intend to do things, but their instincts are so powerful that they overpower people. And that's not an excuse for different behaviors and stuff. It's just an understanding of how powerful these natural instincts can be.
Right. Yes.
And it's also like violence as well, because if oh, you've got to be kind and gentle. See, I've called this from pretense to presence.
Mm.
We've called it that, isn't it? But pretense is if somebody says to you, will you do me a favor, and you don't want to, but you say yes, that's
Mm.
not true. So you're
Exactly.
going against your own true core essential feelings.
Mm.
If somebody says to you, do you want to have sex tonight? And you don't want to, but you say yes, that's also going against, you see. So there's lots and lots of different things here. I don't know what all that was about, but that's just the sort of little a précis or a little abstract from my own life that I've come to terms with now and stuff like that.
Mm.
Should
Yeah,
we
I think
go
that's
on? Oh,
very
sorry.
valuable to people because starting to recognize what is, because one thing is if you're coming from like a family with really like clear trauma, there's been abuse, there's been a lot of illness, there's been violence or any sort of situation like that. It's very, obviously it's very challenging to go through and to take the process afterwards.
Yeah.
But it's the point which can be easy is to recognize that, oh my goodness, this was actually not normal. This is not the right way, even though it's a long process afterwards. But when it's these kind of programs and ways of the society and of a culture, maybe it's not until we are like in a completely different culture on a travel or something and we see people doing things in a different way, or they're talking to people in a different way. It's like that's like can you really do that? Like, you know, and then because those things are so deeply unconscious, because it's what we see in everyone. It's like, for example, in Norway, we have this, it's called janteloven, the law of jente, and it's like you're not going, you can't be better than others. You can't talk yourself up. You can't, you know, all of these, like there's a long list. And then when we see Americans and they are like bragging and they are like, it's like, you just can't do that in Norway. You seem like it's very, very different, you know? We are so taught to like be very like careful and oh no, but you're better than me and you do this better and you are, and it's we don't see it until we see people doing it differently. And it's like, oh my goodness, you can actually do that. And maybe I'm not doing it the proper way. Maybe I need to look at this.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it's really interesting to see what's hidden in the cultures.
and that's what we were talking about. There's a gentle way to find out what suits you at the level of the soul. And what you do might be exactly the opposite of what I need to do.
Right, exactly.
But the overriding principle, in my view anyway, in the way I feel, is above all, do no harm.
Yes.
You know what I mean? However, there's a sort of little rider to that as well, because sometimes, I've said this before, is sometimes we need to punch with love as well, especially when we're guiding other people. And the example I use is if somebody's drowning and you get close to them, right? If you're not careful, their desperation will drag you down and you both die, you know. But sometimes you can go out, you can see an opening, you can knock them on the chin, knock them out, and while they're knocked out, drag them to the shore, and then you've saved a life then. So it's about really, it's like a dance more than anything else, you know. And I hate conflict, but I can stand up for myself now. I really can now. And I can say, whoa, hang on a second, you know, hang on. Yes. This is the way I see it now. And I'm dead honest about the way I see things now, you know. But it's taken a long time, Kristin, for me to get there, you know. And sometimes I can feel the old one coming back in and I go, oh, hang on a second, you know. But my thing is now in meetings, if we ask each other, how do you see it, Joe? And can you see a solution to this? And you say, this is the way I see it. And this is the way I feel that the solution is. And then you leave it then. And then it's not a discussion or anything like that. You're just asking for honest views and you put them all out on the table. The problem comes when somebody says, oh, I'm not having that. This is the way it should be done. That's when it all goes wrong then, you know.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And I think transparency, I put out a little video on that yesterday. Because the thing with transparency is that it's pretty neutral. It is not, because when we are going through all of this, and, you know, for example, with conflict, that's been a huge one in my life as well. Super uncomfortable and so fearful of conflict and just don't want to go there. If it's not harmony, it's, you know, so I have been like boot camping myself and practicing, you know, to stand in those situations, because I have learned through, you know, my healing journey that if I don't stand in the conflicts externally, the conflict will be on the inside and it will create illness in my system. So now when I meet conflict or I stand in the conflict, or I know that I will create illness in my body, and then the choice actually is pretty easy for me now of what to do, even though it's uncomfortable, but it's a practice, right?
Yeah, of course.
I think where did I start? I lost my train of thoughts now.
Must have been a lie, as my mother would say.
Transparency. I think when we are really caught up and in overwhelm, there's a lot of emotions and there's a lot of thoughts, and we can be like, for example, I have with one of my closest friends, she calls me out on my own bullshit. She's amazing. When I'm in my thoughts, she sees right through me, and she's like, she can just send me like this little emoji of a frying pan, because it's like, now I'm hitting you in the head with a frying pan, and I'm like, oh my God. And then there I've been like creating all of these things, and, you know, what if this and what if that, and it's like so super complex. And then she comes in with like 2-3 sentences, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's actually that simple, you know. It's just, and I think what I've come through, because I've been really sitting with this lately, and they started talking to me about transparency and saying that it's actually very neutral. And it's when you're in a situation and you're in a relation with someone and you are caught up in your, whether it's, say it's a family dynamic, and, you know, there's siblings and there's parents and there's a lot of stuff happening. or whether it's between friends or it's with a partner, you know, whatever kind of relationship dynamic there is. And there's, you are in your thought patterns and you are in your traumas and you are in your reactions and all the emotional turmoil with it. And so are the other people. Just being transparent is not saying, yeah, but I feel this and this is, it's true. Yes, it's true. What you're feeling is true. What this person is feeling is true. And what this person is feeling is true. But if we can just say, take a step back and say, I'm really caught up in my emotions now. And my head is telling me this and this and this and this, because I believe that this means this. And just taking that step back, that's transparency. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. What are you feeling and thinking? And what are you feeling and thinking? Because when we get all the perspectives on the table, it can actually very often become much more easy because we have been able, without really even knowing it, to step a bit outside of, you know, a bit more into the observer perspective.
I agree. And one of the biggest lessons I learned is that I would always not say things to spare other people's feelings. And we've talked about this. And the bloke who was guiding me he said, Joe, I've never met a more selfish person than you. And I thought, who the fuck does he think he's talking to, you know? And because I thought I was like Saint Joseph, you know what I mean? Sparing other people. See, he said, you're not doing it for them, Joe. You're doing it in case they have a reaction and it hurts you. That's
Yeah.
all about you, Joe, all about you. And
Right.
once I saw it, I became 100% responsible then for my
Yes.
feelings, for the way I process my feelings and my thinking, because really behavior is the way we act. And what determines behavior is how we process thoughts and feelings. It's
Yes.
all within ourselves, right?
Right.
And as you say, it's about having multiple perspectives within us, right?
Mm.
And it all relates to how we see the world, and that's called our perception, how we perceive things, you know.
Yes.
And it is fascinating. Shall I do this like little bit of a PowerPoint?
Yes. Go.
Okay, okay. Good God, look, it's like, is that the time already? I'll have to whiz through this quickly. Okay, so share screen, Joseph. Okie dokie. And we're back. From pretense to presence. And pretense just means, and sometimes denial means, don't even notice I am lying to
Mm.
myself. Denial, you know, and people around us can generally see quite clearly, except ourselves, you know. So it's quite nice actually when you get in the position where you start to welcome more clarity about your own behavior. That's how I feel. Prof's here and Dr. Joe. And okay, it's session 6. All right, session 6. And so what are sort of my soul, if you like, or my whatever, this innate intelligence that guides me says, tell them about the sun, Joe, because there's lots going on with the sun. But just to start off with, the I am presence or source itself, that's sometimes called the grand central sun or the great central sun. And that's having a bit of a shift at the moment as all the planets and the stars move around as it normally does, because it's always changing, always moving. And as a consequence, because everything's connected in my understanding from yoga and stuff like that, then we're all going to be affected by what's going on in the cosmos. So there we have, then we've got all the galaxies and the stars and stuff like that, and they form star clusters, then galaxies, then solar systems, and this is our sun, right? And our sun will be sending information now. It's almost like someone drops a stone here, and initially the ripples are very, very close together and high frequency. But as we get further along, the waves get longer, but they still impact upon our lovely planet here. And what happens to our planet is that's shaking and vibration and sort of changing frequency as well. And then it impacts upon us as individual humans. And I won't spend too long on this, but we almost like start to get cleansed from the earth itself, and it works up this way, like we talked about before, is almost like a kundalini awakening and a rising thing that's happening. And this is what's happening in some pictures I got, really, is these solar flares. I know it says blurs then, I was a different word. These solar flares that are increasing, right? And the Schumann resonance, it's called, is increasing. And the way I see it is, it's like a drum, really, that these drum beats are coming more and more quickly, and they're bouncing off what's called the ionosphere and the magnetosphere. And that's what's actually happening, is there's a magnetoelectric and electromagnetic effect. And this is what's called the electromagnetic spectrum, which we've talked about before. So here's the sun, here's the high energy, high frequency vibrations. And as they go, now you can see as well that it's all connected. Everything's connected. It's just like a big, like shaking a rope, really, and at these different frequencies of light, different characteristics emerge. So, for example, we've got the gamma rays, then we have X-rays, and we come down to ultraviolet A, B, and C. Then we hit the visible light spectrum. Now, what's happening is our senses are becoming more sensitive. We're moving now, and we're having extended sensory awareness now. Some people used to call this ESP. And I think what's actually happening is the sensitivity of our senses is increasing. So some of the symptoms include the light sometimes is too bright, and people having to put sunglasses on because they can't stand the frequency of the light, because it seems to be much, much brighter than it normally is. That's one thing, and that's affecting the eyes. Then some other things is that you can smell stuff a mile off, so our sense of smell increases a lot, and people stink a bit more, when you're on the train with people, you can smell them more and stuff like this, It's not them, it's just that what was always there is now becoming perceptible to you. So if these things are happening, please try and take it as a positive sign that you're increasing in vibration, but you have to watch out that you don't become emotionally intolerant of those around you. And because if you start pointing the finger at other people, you're missing out on the understanding that it's your processing that's changing. And believe it or not, it might feel like a curse initially, but it's increasing your sensitivity. Other things as well, let's do other senses. Your sense of touch as well. You might become more touchy, and you might feel like people are too close, get away from me, I need my space. That's also an extension, right, of your touch perception. But the other thing is as well is you might become aware of not only those exteroceptive ones, that's the outside stuff, excuse me, but there's also interoception as well. So you may start to feel parts of your body that you never knew you had before. That would be a positive thing as well, because you'll start to be able to pay more attention then to the signals that your body's sending you as well. And this is all part of the ascension process. So we've done sight. Oh, by the way, on the sight one, you might start to see things, right? And you might think, oh no, I'm sure something was there, So you might actually start to see things that are formerly being invisible starting to become visible. And this is called clairvoyance. So you started to get clear sightedness, it's called. And some people, they start to see things like dead people, but there's no death. It's just like souls and things. So they start to see souls, start to see spirit and things like that. One of the ways to improve this as well, you can do something called mirror gazing. So if you have a dim light and you just start looking in the mirror, sometimes you feel as though there's like a sort of magnetic effect happening. And you may be looking at your face, and then suddenly you may find that you're looking at your face that's not your face, that it's somebody else's face. This will be, believe it or not, you're not being possessed by anything. It's just that your third eye is opening and you're starting to see maybe aspects of the guides and the helpers that have come to help you and stuff like this. So there's lots of these things that would be seem to be weird, but they're becoming less and less weird now as people open up to these new sensory awareness. So we've done that. We've done sight. We've done sound. You might even hear voices when there's nobody else around. That's called clairaudience, and sometimes that can be a bit frightening, but once again, it's all part of the expanding process. And then we've got taste as well. Stuff that you used to love to eat might taste like shit now, right? And that's why a lot of people, who've been,
that happens.
Yeah, it's amazing, because you may find that, formerly you've been a meat eater. I'm not saying that this is the way it goes, because sometimes people have to go the other way. Sometimes people who eat meat, they eat it and it just tastes like shit, and they start to eat more vegetables. Then they maybe even consider going vegan and stuff like that. Fair enough, but it's individual. You have to work with your own expansion process, because sometimes you might have been a vegan for about 5 years and suddenly you've got this smell of bacon wafting through your nose. It may be the fact that you need to eat meat to get some of the minerals and vitamins that you've been lacking. Because, I mean, I don't know. You have to work it out for yourself. So in my view, people can offer suggestions, but if it doesn't sit right with you, you need to sink deeper and ask your soul, what is it that you're guiding me towards? Now, it could be wrong, could be complete nonsense, but this is the way I feel it works. Is nobody can tell you except yourself at the depth. So we've done.
That's a like massive red flag. If someone is telling you that you have to do it this way, you have to eat this, you have to do like that, you have to do that practice, you have to do that's an old timeline. That's something that has been, it's very individual, and we can receive guidance and check it with our own system. It's a very different thing than doing what someone has found out, whether it might have worked wonders for others, but if they think that that's the one size fits all, then they can't really tune into other people.
And it's difficult, isn't it, when you're in a close relationship as well, and when you've sort of a little bit further along on the journey, you can see clearly what somebody needs to do, and you try initially to tell them, and then it causes trouble. So but in the end, if they're not ready to hear it, and this I'm talking about us as well, if we're not ready to hear it, right, then it's pointless actually trying to force opinions on people. And I think that's the difference between being transparent and being translucent, because translucent means lets the light through, but it's still not clear. So there's different. So we've done sight, sound, taste,
smell,
touch. Oh, smell. We've done smell. That's fine. I thought I'd only done 4. Taste, touch.
I did all of them.
Done all of them. Okay, yeah. That smell one's are funny though. And sometimes you can use these things. If there's a particular smell that you like and it makes you feel comfortable and relaxed, then that would be for you. Like, for example, grounding. If you use the earthen smells like sandalwood, and things like that, all these things have an impact upon the way that your psyche works. And psyche, people think psyche means mind. It doesn't. It means soul. The word psyche comes from soul. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is you may start, and the other thing is as well about the touch, the feeling one is you may start to feel when you're close to people, heat and radiation coming from them as well.
And even see it, like,
well, absolutely.
Just like people see the ground on a hot summer day, and you can see that like almost like blur. That's the same thing you can see from people sometimes. And I think with the smell, it's very interesting because only by like if you've been connected to a person's field, that energy is not bound to the physical place. So I've had experiences like, for example, I've been talking on the phone with a friend in Australia, and I'm like up in Norway. It's pretty far away. I definitely cannot physically smell what's going on in Australia. But I was in the forest, a few hours after we had talked, and suddenly I started smelling this very weird smell that I don't have. It could not be my clothes. It was not where I had been. It definitely was not a forest. And I was like, it smells like incense. And I don't use that in my own house because I'm super sensitive to smell. So it's too much for me. And then I was like, where is this coming from? Like, I really don't understand. And then I felt that it was like some vanilla and some rose in it. And then suddenly I got a picture of him, and I texted him, and I was like, I'm really sorry, but are you burning incense? And does it smell rose and vanilla? And he was like, oh my goodness, yes. He lit that up like 10 minutes after we had talked. And it was only, because our energies had been connected while we were talking. And then it's like it still sort of lingers in my field. So it doesn't need to be only the like on the train or from the kitchen, it can really.
But are you still there? Yeah, it's these are the subtle things, aren't they? We're becoming more aware of these subtle things. And this is the interconnectedness of it all. Because there's a lot more telepathy going on. People talk about that. And telepathy doesn't mean that you know what someone's thinking. It's just that there's a link then comes from, soul to soul contact. But that smell one, that's the new name I've just been given. That's called smellepathy.
I love it. I
Yeah,
love
smellepathy. Yeah,
it. I
yeah, me
love
smellepathy's increased as well. Yeah, but I get that. Sometimes I get really vile smells and stuff. I just need to change my underclothes.
I had that today as well. I was meeting a friend and going for a walk up in the forest and by the lake. And as she was arriving, I was answering a message that I had gotten. And the first thing she said was, "Did you write a message to this and this person? And was your state this and this?" And I was like, "Yes, actually." And it's like, but she just saw it from my field. Like it's just like, and I feel it's so amazing because it's just like it's so freeing when everything is just like open. It's just like, yes, that's how it is. And then we start talking about something else. It's just, yeah.
But it's happening, isn't it, so quickly now and so rapidly, but it can freak a lot of people out. But the message I'm trying to get across is this is a good thing. Just don't try and work it out and be threatened by it.
Exactly.
Just understand that it's because your radar is increasing and you're moving really from gross senses to sensibility. So this is the move from sense to sensibility. And the word sensible means to be able to pick up more refined information, so that you can make more sense of things. Sense is good, and sense and stuff like that. So that's what's happening now. Sorry, go on, Kristin.
Experiencing that in the meeting of the society we have today can be rather challenging because it's not made for the sensitivity that we are in or are coming into. But the more people that are actually experiencing these sensitivities, the more the society will change because we will need to have a society that adapts to who we are. So that change is coming. So rather than moving away from it because I just can't live like this, embrace it because the quicker the society will change.
I couldn't agree more. And it's so important. And the thing about this is you can smell bullshit quicker as well. You know what I mean? So this is part of our discernment mechanism. And it's moving out because for various reasons, and most of us who listen to this know the reasons, but our senses have been dumbed down. We've been anesthetized really and dumbed down. But what's happening now is as this great big shift comes in, our senses are expanding, right? And it's positive now because we can see for a mile off, we can smell a mile off when something smells fishy. So all these things now are enhancing our ability to detect what isn't true, and that's not only in other people, but it's in ourselves as well. So, if we can accept that all the stuff that's coming up, we can look at ourselves because the more you understand it in yourself, the more clearly you see it in other people as well, And it's best not to point it out to them, really. It's just become a witnesser and just like notice and observe, really, instead of commenting, and saying, I can tell, anyway, that's a different story. Let me go on to the next slide and see what's
The ego taking over again.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's the other thing as well. And a lot of sensitive people won't like what I'm going to say, but I'm only describing what's happened to me, right? Sometimes people are born sensitives. They used to call them sensitives, right? Because they were more emotionally sensitive than the general population. They're the way showers of the world. But initially, because we're born into a seemingly harsh and threatening society, we close down. So the first half of a sensitive's life is basically using their skills and their sensitivity to defend themselves, right? That's not psychic. That's protection, right? And it's only when we have a spiritual awakening and we get to that point of desperation, right, that we open up then, and then we can use our senses and our sensitivity in the service of spirit rather in the service of ego. You know what I mean? So initially, sensitive people can become very controlling. They can smell a supposed threat a mile off, right? And so it's very interesting this, but that's
I wish I
maybe
could play what you just said on a repeat so everyone gets that. Like get that. Listen again, people.
Yeah, it's hard, and the whole thing about narcissist empath things coming in.
Exactly.
But sometimes empaths can use their feelings to actually manipulate others in a very subtle way as well, you know. So,
Like people pleasing, for example, it's super manipulative.
Absolutely,
You're
absolutely.
just
And
hiding behind, I'm just pleased, like just
yeah,
trying to be a good person, you know. I'm
yeah.
just like, oh, for
And
me, I'm
if only
people pleaser.
maybe you could change your behavior, because you know when you say that, it hurts me, you know.
Mhm.
All that stuff, you know, look what you've done to me. So you know, it's fascinating, because narcissists are great at this, because they can turn stuff back on you and think that, you know, you're the problem, you know. So it's a fantastic dynamic once you step out of it and see how it works, really.
Yes,
Anyway, maybe we'll do that on the next session if there's any more after this.
that would be very interesting.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
definitely.
So there we are. So just to go back to this one. So we've got the sun, it's sending electromagnetic, and so this is plasma that's being sent out. It's called solar plasma. And basically what solar plasma is, it's massive influxes of electrons, protons, hydrogen, helium, and all sorts of different gases. You know, as it condenses, it becomes more gaseous. That impacts upon the ionosphere, but that impacts upon us as human beings through our water. So the plasma in blood's very important, because that contains the biochemical substances that determine our behavior. It's fascinating the way all this works. So sometimes what we eat can be changing our behavior. Sometimes if we're eating stuff that's not clean, or if we're putting stuff in us that's not clean, it can actually determine our behavior. So to try and clean up what we eat, what we drink, you know, and all this sort of stuff is probably quite important, I would say, you know. And so, okay, so the electromagnetic waves are then hitting our brain, and it's actually impacted upon the way our brain waves work. So it's all really about waves. It's all about waves. And then
Fascinating. It's exactly what I talked about in the channeling yesterday.
I think we get that, don't we? We get like a confirmation thing, really. And the thing about the waves is, right, it's just like electrical wiring, really, you know, and our behavior causes the wires to go in certain directions. And this is basically what personal physical memory is, but it's also akashic stuff as well, because DNA is simply encoded and crystallized behavior from our personal life and from the life of our ancestors as well. So what they did will determine our neural architecture in our brain as well. So we've had nothing to do with this. It's almost been imprinted upon us through the way our DNA is encoded. So what do we need to do is we basically need to surrender. This is the important bit. We need to unpick and unlock the codes that haven't been working properly in a sequence that they were laid down in. Well, how do we know that? We have to ask our intuition. Please guide me today in the thinking and the actions that I need to do in order to disentangle me from this knots of repeated patterns, you know. And then you have to trust it then. And then you can be walking down the road. It's a bit like saying, you know, I'm really impatient and wonder if you can help me with this. And then you go to the supermarket and there's 10 people in front of you, and the old woman at the front drops all her money on the floor, and you can feel all this anger rising because you're impatient. Well, that's exactly what you asked for. You asked to be trained in that situation, right? So, as they say, be very careful what you ask for. You know? But no, the important thing, this is what I've learned is, right, you need to trust. You don't need to do anything, but I'll just say you need to trust spirit to guide you to unpick the knot in a particular way so that it can disentangle more quickly. And every time you disentangle a knot, more power will flow into you. You'll feel more vital, you'll feel more clear, and you'll feel that I'm on the right path here, you know, until
Yes.
the next.
And also with that, you know, the emotional addiction we have to thoughts, because the thoughts are actually like it's a huge pharmacy up here, right? Because it's directing, you know, the messages that goes to every gland in the body and all the hormones and everything that is being made in the body. And so if we have certain thoughts that normally kick off certain hormones, or you know, I mean, we do get into an emotional addiction to that. When we start changing that, we can actually start, without noticing it in the beginning, craving those thoughts or those emotions because our body is used to those chemicals. So that is as well something to be very aware of in that process when we are shifting and changing this neural pathways.
No, I agree entirely, because really it's the biochemistry that impacts upon the stem cells and the stem cell surfaces that actually determine how the DNA expresses itself. So that's why it's too complicated for the simple human mind to understand, because otherwise we just bump back. Somebody said practice the opposites. I don't believe that's true, right? I believe we've got to practice things in the sequence they were laid down in, so that the balance comes naturally, and sometimes it's like cross training. Sometimes we might do something over here that affects something over there, and we can't see it because all we see is a very narrow sort of outlook, if you like. But because our soul is the supervisor, so super means above and visor means to see, it can see exactly what we need to do. It might drag somebody into your awareness. For some reason you're walking along and you turn right and you think, I wonder what I'm turning right for. And you bump into somebody that you fell out with 10 years ago and you say, hello, how are you? Listen, I'm sorry about all that nonsense. Oh no, it's just a misunderstanding. And then immediately some sort of obstruction is reconnected, recalibrated, and a new flow comes in. So what I'm trying to say is trust the process, trust your innate intelligence and navigation system to guide you on a daily basis to how you need to disentangle yourself from the mess that you created.
Yes.
Right, there we go. Next one. And that's about frequency and brainwaves. Now, there's more stuff. Zen Buddhists and Zen monks, they operate on a very, very high frequency thinking, right? Because they're trained in it. But some people are going into really, really high waves called gamma waves. Now, with gamma waves, if you're trained in it, you can focus and concentrate on just one single pointedness, but it takes training. Before it comes through, as the vibration increases and pushes you up to gamma waves, it can be filled with panic attacks and anxiety. So if you're getting any more anxiety and paranoia and panic attacks, and you think you're going backwards, you're not. It's your frequency that's increasing. And I would say, please learn breath work techniques. So it's breathing in slowly, breathing out slowly, and allowing yourself not to try and work anything out, just trust the process. There's loads of people who are having anxiety attacks now, and it's a positive thing if they can understand they can regulate their emotions by stimulating what's called the vagus nerve. So there's so much here, but it's very simple. Things like Tai Chi, Qigong, Yin Yoga, dancing, all these sorts of things, just to keep, the movement going. So when you're doing Tai Chi, breathing in, breathing out, waving hands in clouds, breathing in, breathing out. Feel the mist as you just drag your hand through the clouds. All those things will help you to ground and emotionally balance yourself and reduce the anxiety. So then you're able to think more clearly, you can focus, you're less distracted, and you start to go forward then. This to me is what true progress is all about. And there's even higher waves up here now called lambda waves now, but that's further down the line. So they're the brain waves. And this is basically what's happening. It's this thing here. We've taken the skin off this thing here. This is the brain, right, where all the processing goes on. And what happens is, and we've shown you this before, is this is your electrical system of your body. So how you're processing information here, right, in the top part, in your cortex and your midbrain, will determine the signals that go down here. And as Kristin's just said, right, and these are all the nerves, you'll see that these nerves, they're just like wires, and every single one of these nerves will go into a really fine nerve. And if you just touch your hair on your hand or anything like that, you just need to touch it very gently, and that immediately sends information back to you to say, something's touching my finger. Don't you think that's a fascinating system?
I find the body super fascinating. I've been super fascinated by the body since I was a child.
And me too. And it's just, but you can sort of almost come out of it now and realize it's a fantastic machine, because it's really carrying, right, the soul, which is really our full consciousness, really, or our emerging consciousness. So there's that there. So we've got the wiring.
Magic and miraculous. I don't know what is.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And this is the thing, and I'm really strong on this. If we can help children right at an early age to understand what feelings are, to be honest about their feelings, but then not to like pat them on the head, say there. Give them breathing and movement techniques where they can de-obstruct it right from an early age, not to control them, but to allow them to like be free. Then I think that's really a way forward. Earth conquers Earth School, and all this stuff, and back to nature, because the big thing I'm getting is that we've been misdirected away from nature and our true essential natures. And it's coming back now. This truth vibration saying you've been pretending to be something that you're not. It's time to stop that now. Then get back into presence and stop pretending.
Yes.
So this is the thing. So we've got the wiring diagram, and here's all now the organs of your body. So those wires now will stimulate these endocrine glands. And these endocrine glands now, the electromagnetic energies that's coming in from the sun and all these pulses are actually working with this system here called the chakras. So the chakras actually feed the nervous system. The nervous system feeds the endocrine glands as well, right? So if we can get it balanced here, right, then it will send a more gentle and more rebalancing energy, and there'll be less chaos then as well, So we work through these chakras, and you'll see that because of the guidance of our intuition and our soul, you may get a pain in one area of your body. It just means to say is that we're working on this part today. Pay attention, drop into it, ask your innate intelligence, what are you trying to show me? And like me, I get, Joe, it's time to work on your diet now, right? Somebody else might have a pain in the neck, right? Or a pain in the arse, right? And that might be impatience about other people, but they might have a pain in the neck where they've got to do maybe some massage, some stretching exercises, because this is all really about alignment of 12, believe it or not, 12 different bodies, Yeah. So that's the way it works. And there's the soul again. And we don't have a soul in us. We're actually in the soul. And that's the most important thing, is that we're in the soul. It isn't in us, but it works through us. And as it works through us, it's almost like infiltrating every cell of our body now, right, to its perfect balance and perfect frequency. Because I honestly believe that every soul has an individual specific frequency that's part of the whole orchestra, really. And I think, unless we sing our own song and play our own tune, then we're always going to be ill at ease or disturbed in some way,
I find this super interesting with epigenetics as well, that we, start really being able to see it in the science as well, that we can actually turn our genes on and off, which means that even though you have, the genes from your ancestral line of a disease, it doesn't mean that you need to get it, because you can actually, with your thoughts, with the way you handle your emotions, with the way you live your life, not turn that gene on, and it won't be expressed in your physical experience. And it's super fascinating. Yeah.
It is. And I think that the epigenetics is, because we've allowed ourselves to be programmed and conditioned, that's provided like an epigenetic overcoat in us. And it's actually stopped us expressing our essential selves. So we've almost got a primary nature, our first nature, and our second nature. And the pretentious side of us has been the second nature. When you practice something and it becomes second nature to you, well, that's really an obstruction, really. It's an illusion, really. That's the way I see it. So what we're doing now is we're letting go of our second nature, and we're allowing our primary nature, which is our soul's purpose, to come through. And that's why some people have an overnight change in personality. The second nature is associated with our personality, and persona means mask, right? And so that's what that's all about. We're demasking ourselves now as the soul comes through. And sometimes people can have overnight transformation and just be a completely different character. So I see that persona and ego are the same personality, but the soul is what our true character is.
Yes, exactly. And also with that, diseases is in the personality. So we need to change in order to heal.
Yeah.
Because and the more identified we are with the personality, and the more we believe that is who we are, the more attached we will be also to whatever pattern or dynamic or disease or whatever we are experiencing with that personality. And that's really maybe the biggest shift we need to do in our mindset in order to change.
I agree. And I don't know whether this has happened to anyone here, probably it must have. But sometimes you're doing something, and sometimes, like, your father comes through, your father's actions, and you think, oh my God, I've become my father. Well, that's because, so that's how deeply embedded, and people talk about 12 strands of DNA. Just to say that there are only 2 physical strands of DNA. But in the invisible realms, in what's called the morphic fields, this is about fields. So there's fields within the field, right? They feed in information and it works through our 2 strands of DNA. Some people are saying now that there's actually a 3rd physical strand that's being identified. But I've looked into that and I don't find any evidence for that really. So it's being funneled down into like a bipolarity, which is our yin and our yang, our masculine and feminine. Our ergotropic and our tropotropic, and there's loads. There's others, the narcissist and the empath, which are both alive and well in all of us,
Yes.
Whether we like that or not, it's I feel that that's true. So I'm just going to sort of go through this now, but just to say, as I've mentioned before, the thing that I found, because I get information and then I find reading something afterwards confirms it. I used to read stuff and try and take it on board and change myself accordingly. But I feel what I do now is I take no notice of anything at all. Thoughts come in and I can pick up a paper on the train and it'll like give me confirmation, you see. So it's exactly the opposite way around now. And some stuff that I feel most closely resonates with how I feel and what I think is something called Keylontic science, and this is it. It shows us, and I got this a long time ago, that there are 12 different dimensions that are available now to all human beings. Each of them is a different dimension of consciousness. Each of them is a different frequency, and each of them is a different soul characteristic. And obviously, we'll have skills, individual skills that other people haven't got. And it's not to try and be like them and do what they do. It's to accept who we are, accept who they are, and work together in our collective individuality. And I think that that's really important. How do you do that? Well, you sit down and you breathe in that way and you bring a positive emotion in and you open your heart and you say, hello, what do you want me to do today then? It's almost like having an all-powerful employer who gives you the jobs for the day, really. And that's how I sort of see it, really. And that's how we get into all this stuff, really. And there's that, and I won't go on too much now. What are we doing for time? I think oh God Almighty, we'll be going on forever. But are you all right for another few minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll come out of this now. But this is basically from Keylontic science, and I see that there are basically 5 densities here. 5 densities. This is what's called terra. Terra, and lots of people are talking about extraterrestrials now. And extraterrestrials to me means terra means earth, and we go to here. This is terra, this is Tara, this is Gaia. Gaia is the soul of the earth. This is Aramatena, and these are basically the light fields. This fascinating this, and each density here has 3 different dimensions, and most of us only ever get out into these first 3 dimensions. Spiritual awakening happens here as we start to get into the higher heart. So I'll put that there, and if anybody's interested, if you just Google this, you can actually download what's called Introduction to Keylontic Science, and that's what that's about. But we haven't got time for that, and it links to all sorts of invisible planets and things. Fascinating. But in the end, it's about these 2 things working together. And how do we do it is surrender, ask your intuition to guide you through the process, listen in and feel in now what your senses are showing you, and try and follow that, and have the courage to do something that's out of the box and a bit more exciting. Right, so I'll come out of that now. Great. So
it's fascinating, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And when I'm doing it, I'm thinking, Christ, I never saw that before, so you learn as you're going along, and I realise now is, as I've said to you before, we're just scratching the surface of this. So, we haven't got a clue. When you think you've got a clue, it means you haven't got a clue, really,
Yeah, it's just like that moment where you're like, oh, I get it. And then you can just surf on that moment for a
Yes.
little small time, and then the next moment is like, I really don't know shit.
Yeah. And that's our thing as well, because we met via extraterrestrial information, didn't we? And we both shared information. I get loads of information my way, you do your way, and all this light language stuff, which has been coming out of me for a long time, and it used to come out in the drink and stuff like that, but I understand now it's not really language to be understood and translated. It's really the tone of it and the recognition of it that stimulates things in other people as well. And at first I was obviously embarrassed to do it, but I couldn't give a shit now. And it's amazing how the tones are actually changing,
That's
So
really fascinating, yeah. And it's frequency, and it's bypassing the mind. That's its power, I would say.
it is. And I think it's great. And I think we're sort of almost like leading lights, if you like, or way shows. I've got no problem feeling and being that now, because that's what we are. I mean, we are, and if it stimulates other people and they start to do it as well, please understand it's part of the process, and it's a very positive thing.
And if you don't do it, that's okay as well, because whatever is coming up, that's the next thing in your alignment. Yeah.
So should we have a 10-minute conversation, or?
Yes.
Okay.
It's been here for a while.
Yeah, I know. You should have just said, tell him to shut up, you know what I mean? Because when we started, after about 2 minutes, I go, ooh, and I thought, hang on, we've got the.
Yeah, I've been like hearing life language at the same time as we've been talking.
Anosodiach mochna atshirich. Kach urna chora tish machora andichlach achram setrawi. Ukura subtechne okuch. Alach sentoch urmitoch as migrachtoch.
Lerhiat o harata innerata urata lera churung nilarata eratu utar o neralero o harata e churung lerna haika.
Amakurisik neheru. Karasundru urmetakna segregodeshe. Ora koruch sumter achro sumter geneket. Sirakne euro durmetekne hezudit. Gaat urmure tegemahateshe.
Oiron nilara o haiti e aquacha. Arquirkat nilara o marutu una tulu urod lera nirutu ikrat nilara o erquiniriti alara churkat niru alarati eratu erat nerata e antar churin nilara eka.
Agorad myt. Så var det går med sig brak na hore. Hagra dunde klafsa pitten net. Hara tochne ela tonchira ma mukra ma mokra bateke. Karat sik na kortot ni karapasan tarawi de mohorta.
Regerin en arot onda rechera la inko a ekte inko ata inko ukragni a chunknia.
Agorozun de resakne hora tatiko. Sibra gur me karatsam teregi ur to tamashe. Hara tochne ur tatni simbar. Hara tot mura netke.
He orun jere he orun chirilurun awar want und und mo ekrat ai wa ret eko ai kai.
Hot tak sotra me hora du. Sara achundra poch nu drut me egrit. Shebra orandak na urt. Shebra chucht no agrat na urish. Spran terug ora nacht du.
Tur hont rat waler tu hont tu anta wara tu antu tu churni era o
Agora somti kala. Alla sorumira to shamje. Halt och nere sende vi shendra nai. Horelia to khune masatak nai. Horundish mahach nai.
he o anta aekwa Turo ointa auto runniatu. Ma eko ant walera na ha eka. He on ne eka an aika han. Vai kutu oinkit emma ha o eka. Aiku ainti oinku ia au aika aika.
Isuti kora so turu tu ma hot. Eseri yoru nemni kara samtaresh. Haratu tsamriga aru numa karekteshi. Halatak tsamru tatak. Halatu ne elatak murut. Irra maala sandrui ma khwata he. Hurut tsamtarak. Shiptak ni era out kmara idra what was I?
Ne wara ta ai wara tu ai ta ara waya ta ai chara kat eru kanta ku kir no ata antu an ka churu ne alara ta anta anta chara la ta anta ko anta ata ko ta anta.
Isuguri bido. Sebara ka dong tu sheba endoro higa na sanderege. Hakta surur mutta desa ralando druma sendera wa tok shandara wa. Hotan set in de urt akn era tuti sabai. Nukt.
Waya anna la tu anta wa ata ta ara wara ta i. Wara ko nera ta la tu anta chara re aka wa ta eka anta. Era kanta.
Oh.
E kwarata. E tarawanta. E kwanta. Enkwa, karo enta, to little neha kwa eka, ko enta ama, ko ala oire ti uka eka eka, ruma ira uantar itiko ara char kurungana, krentiaka, kurunya.
Resuguri hubbe shemterem di kadok wa shiprit. Haladun era ba shamtakat huserem. Holle niet osh ara yakun ara potne alat sitne. Kurutam ech oshma het.
Elera to anta, chura elera to anta teretwa, chura koneka, to anchara mayata haka. Lariata, kohanta.
Lovely. So that discomfort in my solar plexus has left me now. And it's almost as if once I get into that one and it just keeps going, it's almost like a release for me as well. And then what comes behind that when I'm with you always? I feel like crying my eyes.
It's beautiful.
You have this effect on me. I have to say, every time I see it, I feel like crying, you know. And some people say, don't blame you. Ah, dear.
That's beautiful. You know, when in the first sentence, first sounds that you made, it was like I felt it just piercing into the solar plexus. So I was like, oh, that's where we're going. Yes.
Yeah. No, that was lovely that. And sometimes I do see clear pictures and things, you know. I do have that connection with Sirius C. I've mentioned that before. But then there's the blue being thing. It's almost like, and I don't know whether this information's been put in because of what I've listened to, but I almost like have a commander type person, right, of a starship, you know. I lost my heart to a starship trooper, that's come into my head. But it's almost like the blonde haired type in a sort of it's not a blue being, but it's a person with a blue thing on, you know. Now, as I say, Kristin, I don't want to fool myself and I don't want to fool anybody else. I'm just trying to explain what happens to me.
Yes.
That, you know, most of the time I'm clairsentient and I pick things up in feelings and feel and, you know, but sometimes I get clear pictures and I've had clear voices as well and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm just going with it, really.
Yeah, it's I think it's fascinating. We have to navigate it step by step. You know, it's the first time I heard something clairaudiently was when I was living with my ex some years ago, and I was alone in the house, And suddenly I heard a man's voice, and I was like, did something happen with his voice? And he's already at home from work. And I was like, he's just shouting out like, hello, are you there? And there was nothing. And then I heard a voice again, still behind me, but I had turned around and I was like, okay, so this voice isn't really here. And then I just started, I had a paper on the table in the kitchen. And because I would hear that voice like every now and then. So I just had a paper, and because the sentence in and of itself made sense, but I didn't have any context, so I didn't understand what it meant. But then I just had this paper and I started writing down every time I heard a sentence. It was like, okay, I just write that sentence down, and I just left it. Then after, a couple of months, I started looking at all the sentences and they started making sense.
Fantastic.
So it's like you just have to like take it whenever it comes and then leave it and not try to make sense of it, because that's where we sort of trap ourselves, and then just go with it. That's, yeah.
Well, I've had the weird
ground and ground.
Yeah, the dreams are having are just fascinating. I've even seen, and I don't normally do this, but I've even been getting like magical creatures in there, like unicorns in my dreams and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So that's becoming very, very interesting. But the other morning when I was coming back, because you ascend and back it up into human bodiness, right? I got this clear name, David something or other, right? And I can remember being in that half place and I'm thinking, oh, that's clear. I'll remember that. And it came to me,
exactly.
Remember it, Joe, remember it. It's David so-and-so, David so-and-so, David so-and-so. And I came out and I thought, I'll remember that. And when I woke up, I'd forgotten it. So last night I went in and, clear voice, and I get it. But it will come back, because somebody said to me, don't worry, Joe, relax, because the truth will always return. So it comes around all the time, really, before we go, I just want to say one thing is, my understanding now is that if you surrender and trust your soul to guide you, nothing will harm you, right? It doesn't mean to say things will be easy. It just means to say that you are being protected, right? And, I honestly believe you won't be given anything that you and your soul can't handle from one moment to the next. And that's my personal lived experience, because I have doubts like everybody else, but as something comes in then to say, we've got your back, son, So I just wanted to say that's, and no matter what's coming up, you will be able to get through it, right? One breath at a time.
Yes.
Right, darling. Well, thanks very much indeed. I've really loved that.
Me too.
And give us a shout when you want to do the next one.
Yes.
Okay, and we'll just see. We'll go with the flow, as they say.
Yes.
I'd just like to say to everybody, thanks very much, everybody, for listening. And by all means, put stuff in the comments, and this will go up on YouTube. So if you want to put stuff up on there as well and make some comments, about anything really, because if there's anything that we can do in some way to help, then we'll try our best to do that.
Yes.
But finally, because I always say that finally, I have other things to do as well, because I'm tied up with a lot of university work as well. So I really can't answer messages and do one-to-one stuff, unfortunately. So I'm a bit stuck for that. Whether that'll come in the future, I don't know. But I'm just leaving that to sort of providence, really. So Kristin, my love, thanks very much indeed. I love the bones of you. I love doing this. And
I absolutely love it.
I'll see you next time.
Yes.
Okie doke. Bye.
Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Bye.